Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. We will continue with exploring this matter of Muamalat, but I'm going to rearrange the topics slightly because I think it will be easier to grasp. And we are going to start by talking about markets, caravans, and guilds. And in our second session this afternoon, we will speak about money and contracts. There is a very good reason to do it this way, so I hope you will understand. Well, the first thing regarding these matters of Muamalat is to understand what our sources are. Where do I taking all this information from? Where does it come from? We have first spent a number of hours in the previous sessions trying to understand what knowledge is, and trying to understand what truth, in particularly, appears before us. It's not something that we make. It's not something that of which we can say there are many truths. There is only one truth. The truth speaks to us. We don't make the truth. The truth comes from Allah, as Allah clearly says in the Quran. Haq min rabbika. And there is no any other source. So any attempt to understand what this affair is about, we'd have to exclude any opinion. We're not here trying to interpret something. We are here trying to avoid any interpretation of something. That doesn't mean we are trying to be literalist. We just want to see how this thing, this phenomenon of Medina, speaks to us without putting a lens, without making any clarification. Just see what happened. How did they do things? So, I'm not trying to create another theory of Islam. So that you can say, well, there is Islamic banking and there is the theory of Sheikh Omar Badillo. This is not my opinion. I am moving away from opinioning on the matter. I'm just trying to open the books and see what it says and what they do. So the question now comes, what is the thing that we are looking at? Are we looking at New York? Are we looking at the society as it is today? Are we just making a composite of history and trying to adequately find the best standards? No. We are simply saying we are going back to the best of times, to the epitome of history, to the great, great, great moment that it will never be repeated again, to what is the model of all history from before and after, something. It represents the summit of human existence. And that is the city of Medina al-Munawwara. During the days of Rasulullah SAW and the 3 generations that followed. The 3 generations that followed. Because when Rasulullah SAW died, he completed the deen. It follows Islam is complete from that day onwards. It's during these 3 generations that you find a full manifestation of Islam. And during his lifetime, we see the creation, the building up of all that picture in its completion. That's why Medina al-Munawwara is indeed the city of light. So we know what we are looking at. Now, the way we looked into this is we want to look from the point of view of the practice. Otherwise, what we call the sunnah. The sunnah, the practice, the doing of Rasulullah SAW and the companions. Now, apart from the obvious sources that we have, number one is Quran itself as the revelation through Rasulullah SAW. And then the sunnah composes of, as a source, the text that they refer to the hadith. And then we have another source, which is the amal of the Ahl al-Medina. Now, this is a particular way of looking at the city of Medina as a source in itself, as an evidence. So they say, for example, there is a hadith that Imam Malik, I'm referring to, not Imam of the Maliki Madhab. The Imam Malik obviously was not a Maliki. Imam Malik was if you ask him what he was, he probably will tell you, I am an Umari. And they didn't say, we follow Rasulullah SAW out of shyness. They say, if following the steps of Omar ibn al-Khattab is like following Rasulullah SAW. He was the Imam of Dar al-Hijrah. He was the one who was there. And therefore, he makes judgment, the basis of which is, occasionally, he would say, but there is a hadith of Rasulullah SAW that correctly transmitted. It says, the people do not rent land for gold and silver. And then he says, but the people in Medina, we rent the land for gold and silver. Now, in this example, which I use as a kind of showcase of what the argument I'm bringing forward to you, you can see that in the Amal, Imam Malik is finding more consistency. In other words, 10,000 people taken from 10,000 people is stronger than one taken from one. He doesn't deny, of course, nobody even thinks of doing so, that Rasulullah could say something that we have to contradict. Impossible. It's just out of the question. What they are saying is that it may be that in the context on which this sentence was produced, something may have been eliminated, maybe referred to this person. This land cannot be rented for gold and silver. If you, in other words, here identifying a danger, this is a sentence which is decontextualized, it may be wrongly interpreted. So in fact, what Imam Malik concludes is that the hadith will be highlighted in its meaning by adding the contextual reality of Medina. In other words, what the people of Medina do. So giving an account of what the people of Medina do is the amal of the Ahl al-Medina. Seen as evidence means that if they were doing it, this is a very strong evidence. Of course, this is in all consideration of the natural hierarchy of sources. Quran, Rasulullah SAW, naturally, number one. And second, the Sunnah. So nothing that the Sahaba could possibly do, uncontradicted, any of things has any validity. Only an account of creating a contextual reality in order that we can understand what Medina was and what the hadith is. So it's very important that we notice that when people today speak about Quran and Sunnah, they often say, more than often, very clearly say, Quran and Hadith. Quran and Hadith. The Hadith is not the Sunnah. The Hadith is what Rasulullah said. The Sunnah is what Rasulullah did, which means everything he said, the Hadith, plus everything he did, which is recorded by other sources. For example, Imam Malik, when he speaks in the way of the Amal of the Ahl al-Medina. What Imam Malik, when he speaks about the Amal of Ahl al-Medina, brings forward are things that normally do not come throughout the canons of law. He speaks about things, the nature of which is not haram or halal. He speaks about something new, which is incredibly important when you are going to try to renew society. But from the point of view of the fiqh, it may just be diluted among other much greater statements, such as, he says, this is haram, this is halal, but occasionally he says, this is not the way of doing things among us. And he also says, this is not the way of doing things among us. This is the things of way, this is the way we do, and this is not the way we do. This is normal, but this is not normal. Now, this element of normality is critical in order to build up a society. For there are things, the nature of which they are not haram, but just simply, this is not how we do things. Going back to normality, understanding normality, understanding how the things are done, is fundamental in order to contextualize all the other elements of law. Let's say we take this matter of normality out of the way, as inevitably happened for the people who developed the fiqh in areas such as Kufa or other places. They were not living in Medina. So all they had is hadith. So they had to develop principles as a deduction from the hadith. So what happens is that this element of normality doesn't obviously appear. What you have is haram, halal. You have to deal with these tools. Now, in every haram, halal situation, you find yourself a contextual, a number of realities, cases that they apply normal to, they comply perfectly with the statement, but there are occasionally you find exceptions. And that if you try to normalize these exceptions under a single rule, then you find that now you have extended normality now with the new exception. Which then you have a rule which, if a new exception applies to, then you have to keep making a little bit more abstract the rule in order to encompass the new exception, and so on. And that's why the books of fiqh become thicker and thicker and thicker with time. It happens also with the fiqh of Imam Malik. There is the madhab of Imam Malik and there is the way of Imam Malik. Two different things. What I'm trying to highlight here is that in order to go back to the original source, the fiqh may not always give us the right approach. That with the fiqh, what you find is a haram halal situation. But you may not find how the things were done in Medina. In order to find how the things were done in Medina, I have to go back to the one source that tells me this is how the things, this is the way we did things. So this is what is the meaning of the amal of the Ahl al-Medina. The amal of the Ahl al-Medina as an evidence is admitted in all the fiqh, in all the madhabs, Maliki, Hanbali, Shafi, etc. So the book of Imam Malik is not seen as the book of the Malikis. It's used with Abu Hanifa, it's used with all the other schools. The amal of the Ahl al-Medina, Ibn Taymiyyah has a thick essay saying the prevalence of the amal of the Ahl al-Medina over all evidences as the source. This is Ibn Taymiyyah. And this is repeated throughout the history of all the madhab. So we're not talking here about madhab division. We're talking about how do we look at Medina and what the sources is going to be. So this is what we are using as sources. We are using the Muwatta of Imam Malik, the commentaries of the Muwatta of Imam Malik, the Mudawwana of Sakhnun and the commentaries of Mudawwana of Sakhnun as the most clear response or evidence or writing record of how this city of Medina was. This is going to allow us in a much more advanced state for the things that we're going to cover during this talk is so basic that even with the hadith, you have enough in order to prove the things that we're going to bring forward. But from the point of view of the methodology and in our quest of furthering these ideas even further, if you want to go in details over all the things that I'm going to bring forward, is the amal of the Ahl al-Medina, we're going to find the most authentic versions and corroborations of these facts. So let's go back now to what do we see in Medina. This is the exercise. You look into the hadith, you understand, you find the world with words such as souks, markets, caravans, dinar, dirham. So the exercise is a little bit like closing your eyes and seeing yourself walking in the streets of Medina. Here, what you are trying to do is that devoid for a moment your interest in haram halal situation. What we want is to understand normality. What we want to understand is the halal. Okay, riba is haram, fine. But if I don't understand what is halal, I don't have a chance of doing anything. So let me see how the thing worked. Because otherwise, imagine if I only know illness, how I'm going to find myself into health? It's not immediately obvious. I can start getting rid of the symptoms, but how do I know where to stop? Where do I know that I'm now a healthy body if I don't have a template of health? So that's what we are doing. We're looking at how did these people live? How did the things How was it done? So if our sources are books of fiqh, what we are going to find is a lot of judgment. So we have to read almost in between the lines. Not in between the lines. It's clearly when it says in a hadith, and they were using dinars, we stop right there. I said, he paid 20 dinars. Stop. What is a dinar? Okay? Okay, leave the judgment for later. What is the dinar? And they say, and he went to the souk of, stop. The souk of what? Souk, what does it mean, souk? They had markets. And Rasulullah SAW went into the caravan, stop. What is a caravan? I don't see any caravan today. What is a caravan? What does it work? How does it operate? The contract, and he used the contract of Kirat. Stop, again. The contract of Kirat, it was done with the caravans. How all these things connect together. So what you are doing is that, bit by bit, we are constructing the city of Medina. And then the next exercise is, okay, let's put the dots together and let's see how the people of Medina lived. This is our best chance that we have to understand what is halal. And my argument here is that to know what is haram is insufficient unless we are capable of producing an alternative. In other words, to say riba is haram is not going to help me until I know what the alternative is. Okay, so let's jump ourselves in. We have looked into certain things and we're going to try to close our eyes and see how this thing was. So the first institution is going to be the marketplace. Then we're going to talk about gold dinar, but later. We're going to start now with the marketplace. What do we see? Rasulullah SAW comes from Mecca, arrives in Medina, he builds a market. The next thing he does, he looks for a place, for a market. He says, no, this is not good. And this is the right place for the Muslims. And he makes the market of Medina. And then he says, these two is sadaqah to the people. Nobody can own it. Nobody can charge a fee. Everybody has access to it. And many other rules. Nobody can restrain the access to it, as in putting obstacles. It has to have freely access to the thing. Of course, there's no fee. There's no taxes for going to the mosque. There's no taxes for going to the marketplace, etc., etc. Now, that's interesting. Because this is the declaration of a public marketplace. In part, not public. Because it's not owned by the state. It's not privately owned. It's not publicly owned. It's a waqaf. A third institution, unique to Islam, where we say this property belongs to Allah. In another, the government cannot sell it. They don't have authority. It is preserved forever for the benefits to which it has been built for. So the Muslims all the time, they used to say, our business is to restore the property back to its owner. So, putting everything in the name of Allah doesn't belong to us. To Allah, it belongs to Allah. It belongs to Allah. That was the idea of the waqaf. So the marketplace is, first of all, public. Now, when the Muslims expand and they start acquiring larger parts of the Arabian Peninsula, they enter into the Mesopotamia, and they create two camp cities. One is Basra, and the other one is Kufa. Then it was going to become the city of great historical events for the future of Islam. They were created from scratch. There was a small settlement, but it was, built totally fresh. The first thing they do is that they settle the place, and they say, this place for the mosque, and this place for the market. The first thing they do. In fact, throughout the history of Islam, and this is very clear with the Ottomans, who recorded everything. They wrote everything that you can write. So we know details of how these developments with them it happened. They call this thing imaret. To the simplicity of the mosque and market and hammam, which always came into the picture with the Arabs, they added the madrasa, and they added a hospital, and they added some other public service, including the bakery, for example. You know, that they became waqaf. All the bakeries, the food making, the bread baking was typically a waqaf. And this thing they call imaret, which is from imara, which is like construction, development. So when they wanted to develop a new city, when the Ottomans conquered Sarajevo, they do exactly the same thing Rasulullah SAW did in Medina, and Omar ibn Khattab did in Basra and Kufa. He said, mosque and market. The Ottomans officialized this version, and there was no new city without mosque and market. Like even Khaldun said, if a city doesn't have a market, it's a settlement, it's not a city yet. So to be a city, you have to have a public marketplace. Which means if Ibn Khaldun comes to Kuala Lumpur, he will say, this is not a city, this is a settlement. Because there's no public marketplace. Now, the idea that marketplaces, well, the word market, as you know, any one of you, if you listen to television as you do, market has become a word that is so misused that is almost difficult to understand. When they say market, what they refer to the physical market? No, they refer to an abstract market, but sometimes they reflect to a mind of its own. The market decides. Omnipresent, omnipotent, unquestionable, almost like a god-like figure. The market decides. The market is moving into this direction. You know, it has a mind of its own, apparently. Apart from this fantasy of nonsense, we have an understanding of market which is very clear. It's a public marketplace. That's what we are talking about. When we say public marketplace, we're referring to a physical location that has rules. That is the meaning of souk. So next time you read in the hadith the souk, you say, the public marketplace. And you can never say a Tesco. Or this is like one Utama. No. Because it is forbidden to privatize the marketplace. Forbidden. Just as it is equally forbidden to privatize the mosque. The Muslims did not invent this idea of a market accessible to the people. It came from before. Public marketplaces had been in existence from the Greeks, the Romans, the Chinese, from every civilization, in fact, all, without exception. Every city in Europe you can go and you can find out that in its origin there was a public marketplace. Public marketplace, meaning you don't own the marketplace. Public marketplace. The idea of privatization, where does it come from? 70 years ago. It's new. Supermarkets is new stuff. So when we start building Tesco's like there is no tomorrow, you have to bear in mind that the people in Britain who already have the Tesco's, they are saying, this is no good to us. And there's an organization there against the supermarkets. Because they suddenly realize that, hang on a minute, this monopoly is killing us. There are university studies now in the United States that prove that everywhere you open a Walmart, within 5 years, the standards of living of the population declines. Because when they appear the first day, of course they are cheaper. They're cheaper than the shops around. But then the shops disappear. So the supermarket has all the money. When the supermarket has all the money, it is expensive. Because they won. Yes, you have all the money now. Now we cannot afford it. Your cheap prices are too expensive. Because society cannot grow by the expansion of credit. Greed is not the motor of growth. It's balance. It's that everybody grows at the same time. This is prosperity. So the marketplace is something very easy to understand. It's a waqaf is an institution for trading which is legally established as a waqaf. I can add to this that wherever a marketplace is established, unemployment is impossible. And the reason for that is that trading has the unique ability to incorporate as many people and to give living to as many people as you want. It stimulates production, stimulates distribution, stimulates wealth, stimulates distribution, blah, 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 blah. What we are saying is that we are in favor of trading. Of course. Of course we are. In fact, we cannot say trading, we invented trading. Definitely not. But we perfected trading. Definitely yes. We took the institution that is as long as mankind, the buying and selling, and we perfected it. In other words, we clean it, we filter it from all diseases. We said this is not allowed, this is allowed, etc., to a perfection of detail that is overwhelming. And that's what makes the 2/3 of the fiqh. The incredible detail to which our fiqh goes to manners of which is just overwhelming. Of the doing right and the doing wrong. So the marketplace is waqaf. The second thing the marketplace is regulated. So being free marketplace, it doesn't mean everybody does what he likes. Just like when you go to a mosque, you are expected to follow certain rules. And if you follow the rules, you are out of the mosque. You don't start giving a khutbah on Asr. Neither you go to the marketplace, to the mosque, and you start building your own tribune, so that you are the one that prays there every day. You will not be allowed to do that, etc. Well, the marketplace is equally regulated, heavily regulated. First of all, by the application of the Sharia, then by rules that they come by their own nature, built on by the very observation of the activities that the marketplace demands. Typically, the early markets, they were not covered. It was precisely with the conquest of Iraq and Damascus that the Muslims encountered much larger cities than they have ever seen before, and the markets started to be covered. And they started to create facilities, warehouses for larger traders, like especially the people who were dealing with wheat, in order to store. And there were services created around the marketplace that, for which they could demand rent. And here's the first development. The moment the market is covered, then they start building up alongside with the free space of the marketplace where you buy and sell, always free, additional spaces where certain professional activities could be developed. Services to the trader could be provided. Number one, storage. So the storage, the people pay the storage, the traders pay storage, should be close to the marketplace, undoubtedly an advantage to them. And that paid for the marketplace. They had some workshops that they worked in the marketplace, near the marketplace. They didn't sell from the workshops, they sell from the marketplace, but from these workshops they obtain income, a very substantial income for what I was just looking very recently to the markets of Al-Andalus. It's unbelievable. You know, the incredible rents that they obtain. And it was free. And then other services that were provided as entertainment for the public, all of which, like for example, it will be the equivalent of a cinema today. You know, all services you could provide to the public, baths, for example, they will pay for the baths, and this is part of the income that it will maintain the market and the mosque and all the facilities for free. Then there was some taxes, not to the traders, to the Muslim traders, but to foreigners who came with products that they were what Omar ibn Khattab distributed as mutual tax. So you tax me, I tax you. So you charge VAT on my products, then I charge VAT on yours. If you declare that I have the monopoly of this product, then you are taxed in my company. So, for example, a Coca-Cola sold in a Muslim place will be taxed. Why? Because they're a monopoly. So you tax them. But somebody makes, Kelanta and Cola, and it will be totally free. As long as, trademarks, yes, but not monopolies of any kind. And then you have other taxes involving some fines. No, they're not exactly taxes, it's fines. And then obligations to pay to certain practices, like, for example, dumping goods, something very common today, when you have a big factory just underselling the products. And Omar ibn Khattab was very clear: either you raise the prices or you leave our marketplace. The marketplace was strict, very strict. And of course, don't rob in the marketplace. It's not a very good idea. And the punishment were extremely severe, depending on the quantities, the hand. But there was punishment for people who did much less. The marketplace was a tough place, not a very good place for cheating. And it all comes from one of the great people who advanced the agenda of the marketplace. Was one of the governors of Kufa. I think he went to other places too. Zia ibn Habi, who was had been working with Khalifa Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiallahu anhu, and later on with Muawiyah. And he was an extraordinary administrator. And he then was adopted into the family of the Umayyads, and he did extremely amazing reforms in the markets. For example, one of the things that he did is that he changed the rule of first come, first serve into the marketplace, and he allocated the people who come regularly to the marketplace. Then they can keep that position. They cannot own it, they cannot transfer it, but they can keep the same position. This was in order to avoid and to make it easier for the people to come in. That comes from him. And this is after the development of the first open marketplaces. And one of the things he said is that he was very adamant to, is he will take responsibility of every grain, he said. Every grain of good in my marketplace from here to Persia, I take responsibility of it, that it is not robbed. And he demanded to the traders in the marketplace to leave the stand open. He said, don't close it. But later on, because the dogs started coming and eat the food, he allowed it to put some tables on top of it, so just to cover it. But he did not allow to close their stand. You go to the prayer, you come back. I am responsible for the thieves. So that was the extent to which the matter was done. And of course, there were certain things that they are almost unthinkable to us too. Today is like, for example, it was forbidden to shout. You say, "Come here and buy from me." It was seen as something absolutely horrendous and unmanly, ungentleman. So advertising, not good. It's the opposite. I mean, the practice that it was encouraged, it was that when somebody had already filled his provision, he will go and say, "Buy from somebody else, I'm done." Something unthinkable today. The market was built in such a manner, and this is literally what it was said, that it will not give any prevalence to anybody. There will be no privileges. So it was done in such a way that everybody will have same access to people as much as possible, naturally. But the principle was equality, a fair trade, fair conditions, fair play. So the people come, they trade according to our rules, and the whole thing just moves forward according to what is intended. The marketplace, we have to say, is the most important institution in Muamalat, in trading, to be more specific. And trading being the most important part of Muamalat. There's an evidence, if you put all these things together, to say that the fiqh of Islam is essentially, our society is a society essentially in favor of trading. We are trading societies. And to be more precise, we are urban trading societies. If there is a way of characterizing this way model of Islam of the Muslims, is the marketplace and the city. These are the two key things. The marketplace is, as it has been said, is a monopoly. For all the trading has to take place in the marketplace. It is not forbidden. Sometimes it is forbidden, depending on the case, but it is seen ugly as somebody tries to sell outside the marketplace, neither buy before the marketplace. Such as, for example, the known practice of going to the caravan before it arrives to the market, and then you proceed in buying everything, and then you come to the marketplace and say, no, this is my price. This is seen as something extremely ugly and forbidden, in fact. This one is forbidden. But it's not a monopoly. And the reason why it's not a monopoly is for some obvious reason. It's because everybody has access to it. You cannot call something a monopoly when everybody has access to it. So historians who keep saying the souk of Islam was a monopoly of trading by the sultans and all that, they are doing orientalistic, anachronistic, typical assessments of something they don't understand. The guilds equally are accused of being monopolistic, and the caravans equally monopolistic. But it happens to be that these three institutions cannot be monopolistic on the basis that everybody had access to the marketplace, everybody had access to the caravans, everybody had access to the guilds. And then, which is more excruciating, is when they start saying, no, but there is this moment in history when the marketplace indeed became monopoly. Even Khaldun himself says, you know, the illness of the marketplace is when it doesn't grow. This is like having a mosque, and suddenly the city grows, and the people say, no more mosques, only one, only the big mosque. And the people who can pray in the mosque are the 200 families. Everybody else who wants to pray, they have to, I don't know, give a paper and they will pray for us. Now that's absurd, I know, you can see in your faces. Well, trading is the same. Trading, you have the right to trade. I don't need to go back through the intermediation of somebody else. If I have a carpet in my house, I can go to the marketplace and sell it alongside with the largest carpet trader in the world. He has the right to trade, I have the right to trade just as much. But this not was always the case. And we can see throughout the history that occasionally the traders, quite conveniently, they say, no, you know, leave it the way it is. All they have to do is to not continue growing. All they have to do is to restrict the marketplace to 200 stalls. And therefore, conveniently, allow the people who already are there in these 200 stalls, occupying and monopolizing the trading. And Ibn Khaldun, who's an historian, in looking at this affair, he says, one period of decadence is followed by one of prosperity. Prosperity, decadence, prosperity, decadence. If you want to know what time you are living in, go to the marketplace. If the marketplace is owned by a few families, you are in a time of rapid decadence. If the marketplace is open to all, you are in a time of rapid prosperity. Now, in saying this thing, there's a lot of things to say about this, but for me, it's enough to focus onto how Ibn Khaldun would consider the marketplace to be of such importance as to be the most important factor on the prosperity of society. Now, they are not monopolies because they're open to all of us, and all these other institutions, they are the same. They are open, open, open. They may, if throughout the history you find occasions where this rule doesn't apply, it doesn't mean the marketplace is wrong. It means the people who are practicing are wrong. Okay? So you cannot say the souk is not a good idea. You have to say the people who were doing it are wrong. Clarifying this matter, it allows us to be able to look at the souk for what it is within Islamic law, and what is the value and how we can practice it. Of course, all seen in his magnificence during the time of Rasulullah SAW and the first three generations, the Amal of the Ahl al-Madinah. So, with the marketplaces, one of the things that it has to be said is that not all societies had marketplaces. It's not immediately obvious that we have marketplaces, therefore everybody had marketplaces. For example, in 1917, the Soviet Union changed the political system, and there was no more markets anymore. There was only distribution networks. And the people went to obtain provision guaranteed by the state. No markets. As I was saying before, in the days of Carloman, the big French king of the low Middle Ages, he was, during the 6 centuries of feudalism, practically there was no marketplaces. It gradually came towards the very end of that period. But in the feudal days, there was no marketplaces. The people pay in specie from their labor, and the lords pay with servants and serfs for their army and species to the king. And that was it. You had no freedom of any kind. Europe was starving. They were illiterate, ignorant, and they had nothing until suddenly the light sparked in the West through the people of Al-Andalus, and they brought something absolutely they never had seen before. Money. There was no money during the low Middle Ages. There was a little bit. In some of the churches, the money was taken, that was put into the churches, like somebody puts, frames a drawer, or some art, piece of art. Look, 1 dinar, so that the people can see that it exists. There was no need for it. There was circulation naturally, but there was very little. If you compare, this is some historiographers have done this thing. Compare the amount of money in southern France at the same time of the amount of money that it was circulating in Al-Andalus, the difference is absolutely, totally enormous. Enormous. The prosperity is unheard of. These people, they didn't know what freedom was. There were serfs. Occasionally, they didn't even have enough money to look after them, and they were just thrown. They were vagabonds in the land, not knowing where to go. Ignorance was everywhere, and in the south of Europe, in the lands of Al-Andalus, they had baths in the streets with markets full of food, extremely clean, unlike today, and incredibly with things from every corner of the world, thanks to the caravans, overextended. There was education, madrasas, free madrasas. They had light in the streets. It was unbelievable. I mean, and so some, quite rightly, these Christians who didn't have a clue of what left and right was, but they say, well, I mean, no doubt the Muslims have something better than us. And they copied word by word The laws of the marketplace, word by word, they translated into Spanish. The laws, the early laws of the marketplace are identical to the laws of the marketplace of the Muslims. They didn't bother to change it because there was nothing to change. It was perfect. It was amazing. What is to be allowed, what is not to be allowed, how the things are is permitted, what is not permitted, the regulations, the rulers, the muhtasibs, all the regulations of the marketplace, exactly how they did it. And these documents are all over there. So this is when they say, you know, we civilized you. Hold on a minute. Islam perfected the marketplace. Perfected the marketplace. Now, not only from Al-Andalus, it extended to the rest of Europe, but there was further improvements. I mean, the Muslims brought something of their own, something new, and this is Kirat. I'm not going to speak about Kirat because that belongs to my second lecture later, but just only headlines. Kirat, the coming of the commenda, the contract of commenda, as it was referred to in Latin, is now, according to the number one authority on Western European writing, Ferdinand Brudel, the French historian, he writes, it was the introduction of the contract of commenda from the East that propelled the successful economies of all the Italian states during the Renaissance. Obviously, we have a lot to learn about Kirat because we don't even know what it means anymore. Islamic banks have transformed into something absurd, which is nothing to do with the original contract. The original contract is the financing of trading, specifically the financing of the caravans. Since there is no markets, and therefore there is no caravans, there is no Kirat. So this is something yet to be seen. But let me tell you that the importance of Kirat in Muslim societies, like it was in Venice or Genoa, was as important as the stock exchange is today. It occupied that important relevance in society. Some people call it the second harvest, meaning that the people of Medina will be waiting for the caravans to arrive. For almost everybody, universally, they had invested in the caravan. Everybody who had some extra money, they put their money with the caravan. Rasulullah SAW was one of those people who benefit from that. And his job, if you want to know what is the Sunnah job, you know, what did he do? He was a caravan trader, a Kirat agent in the caravans. From the souk of Medina. Neither souk, no caravan, no Kirat exist anymore. All right? So, the marketplace. And we have just initiated the conversation into the next topic, which is the caravans. It follows that a caravan, which is not a line of camels traveling in the desert. Caravans is a guild of traders. And a guild is an association of people of the same trade. And unlike a cooperative, a guild is open-ended. It's people of the same kind working together. But instead of cooperative means membership, 300 members. They own whatever it is that they own. The guild is a number of people of the same trade, shoemakers, but is open-ended. So in other words, there's not 200. It's whoever passes through the system of education that is required and arrives to a mastership, then he will be a member of the guild. The guilds are equally regulated from external sources so that they do not become monopolies, in the same way that there is restrictions both to the caravans and to the traders in the marketplace. They follow rules. The caravan is a guild of traders, so it's an association of traders, and like all the guilds, they follow the same fundamental rule, which is, first of all, it is open-ended, but secondly, all the means of production, they are commonly owned. Not all the means of production, the most important means of production are commonly owned. So, for example, in the case of shoemakers, whatever machinery was required in order to fabricate the shoes, the main machinery will be commonly owned by all of them. If it was farmers, they will have tractors owned by all of them. If it is carpenters, they will have sawmills owned by all of them. It doesn't mean they own everything collectively. No, they didn't. So all the instrumentations in order to polish, and the hammers and everything that you need in order to make your piece of art, it was privately owned. And there was competition between them. In other words, each one produced their own kind, and they had their own signature. And within the guild, there were the chairs produced by master so-and-so of a quality known to be superior to all the others. And this was allowed, tolerated, etc., etc. The caravan, what the caravan means is that all the export effort of the marketplace, the things that you retail, and then the added value of the goods, which means to bring it to another city, instead of being the exclusive, all the tools, all the required means of production for traders means warehouses and the logistics of transportation, including licenses to arrive to another marketplace, permissions, exemptions from tariffs, etc., etc. All those amount of assets required for the trading, they were owned not by one individual, but by the city of Medina. So the caravan of Medina was the caravan of Medina. It represented the entire city. Okay, compare this to Indofood, which controls 85% of all the sales of food from Indonesia. If you want to export anything, you have to go through them. A caravan is different. Is that everybody can join in. You have to follow the rules, but you all come in group in order to trade to another place. So export, it doesn't become a monopoly in the hands of a few, but it is open for everybody to participate. Logically, some of the traders, they have goods that they would like to sell in another place, but they don't want to go to Damascus. That's why people, like Rasulullah SAW, develop the profession of agents. They buy the goods locally and they go into the caravan to go and sell it in Medina. All that is enhancing and opening trading to its maximum possibilities. And to fuel all that is where Kirat comes in. The only contract in Islam that is allowed where you put the money and you can sit down and you are not involved in the business. So if you want to call it, I will hate to call it this way, but you can say it's a capitalist investment. The money makes money for you. You can also lose it, as you know. But you are not involved. Any other contract, you have to be involved. In Sherkat, you have to be involved. Okay? So, but in Kirat, I give you the money, you go, you make the money, I wait for you. If there is losses, as we will see later, it's taken by me. If there is win, it's shared. But the caravans, together with the fuel of financing of Kirat, then they reach vast places, not only brought things from Medina outside to another countries, they also brought things in, which means that the local traders of the Pasamalam of Medina, it wasn't a Pasamalam, but instead of having to sell exactly the same thing that everybody sells, if you put into the Pasamalam, the caravans coming from all the continents of Earth, instead of selling the same stuff they do, they will start picking up products and becoming agents from products from other countries. So the quality starts going up in no time. The market is the university of trading. The one thing you want to do if you want to increase the quality of living of the Malays, and we will go on to this thing tomorrow, is precisely this. Create open marketplaces and you will see the GDP of the people, not of the government, going up 3-4 times in no time with the public marketplace. The caravans integrated market to market, and it works like this. Omar ibn al-Khattab was known for saying, the trader that comes from far away is the guest of Omar ibn al-Khattab. And there comes the tradition of the Arabs of inviting people for 3 days for free. So the practice was that of reciprocal services. So the people of the market of Medina will say to the people of the market in Syria, in Damascus, you allow us to come there, and we allow you to come to us. And this was done by agreement, and a time was created, and they were expecting them, and there was the people kind of gathered for the event of this particular caravan to come in. And that mutual benefit of the traders was how the reason why our caravanserais were built. What is a caravanserai? A caravanserai is a hotel for traders. Where was it built? In the middle of the marketplace, or one of the corners of the marketplace. The marketplace was marketplace because it had free space for the people of town, and it had caravanserais, meaning places especially allocated for the traders coming from abroad. The largest market, or one of the largest markets in the largest market during the Ottoman time, it was the kapali carsi in Istanbul. 400,000 square meters. That means 40 hectares. 40 hectares, just visualize. It's way above 85 acres of land. Covered. Built in like a palace. If any one of you goes to Istanbul, or just Google it, if you want to just see it for yourself, it's amazing. I mean, it makes one of these, modern Tesco's look like a warehouse for nothing. It's a palace. But remember, this was built 400 years ago. In those days, it must have been like the fifth wonder of the world. This is how the Muslims loved and esteemed their marketplaces. The marketplace of Istanbul, the Kapali Çarşı, remember, just one of the many markets that there was in Istanbul, just one of the many. It had 23 caravanserais. So it means in a single day, 23 caravans could arrive simultaneously. And there will be a hotel for the caravanserai is like a hotel. Funduk, in Arabic is al-funduk. Khan, if you speak from the people of the far in the east in Pakistan and Afghanistan, the funduk hosted the people, and typically the architecture is like this. You have a big square, and you have arches, and then there is a patio in the center, the courtyard. During the day, the courtyard is filled with all the products that these people have brought in. In the lower ground, the horses and the camels will be locked in together with the products. And in the first floor, there are the accommodations for the traders. So they will come there, they settle there, they come in the morning, they sell. They stay for 3 days, not very long, but they could stay for a week, depending on where they came from, what the plan was. And they will be selling and buying new things and moved on. This was seen as enhancing the wealth of the people of Medina. The traders were welcome. The Muslims welcomed the traders. They thanked the traders. They bring them in. They didn't mistreat them. They did the opposite of mistreating them. They give them access to everything that we had. They saw in that wealth. And then from the caravans, we move into the third key institution of Muamalat, that it can be seen in every Muslim society. Going back to Istanbul, if you look at the city of Istanbul during the 18th and 19th century, you will find that the chroniclers, they tell us 98% of the population of Istanbul belong to a guild. You go to the city of Aleppo, big Muslim city, Damascus, Baghdad, same. 95%, 96% of the people belong to the guilds. What does it tell you? Well, the Muslims, before these banks arrived, we had guilds. If I ask most people today what a guild is, they will not be able to give me a definition. Like they will not know what a caravan is, and definitely will not know what a souk is. But the guilds, you have to bear in mind that, again, we didn't invent the guilds. The guilds exist in every pre-capitalist society. Everyone. The Chinese were celebrated in the creation of guilds. They still have them. The Romans had the guilds. The Greeks had the guilds. In other words, without banks, that they stored capital into one individual who then owns everybody as slaves, when that model is not in place, the normal organization of society, without exception, throughout the times, throughout the cultures, and that is exceptional. That is something remarkable in itself. All these societies had guilds. The medieval guilds of Europe. There are tons of evidence to prove the importance that these societies had in medieval society, later, second, high Middle Age societies. And what do you find there? What you find is an organization of people who consider themselves equals. The universities were created as guilds, associations of equals. The relationship master-apprentice overcome the modern relation of employer-employee. Employee, quite rightly, was only for the slaves. I mean, Socrates said that. Salaries belong to slaves. The idea of the wage slavery that we have accustomed ourselves to is rare in Muslim societies. Check it out by yourselves. The people got hired because they had no choice. They went through they are impeded mentally, or they come from some disastrous situation and they had to emigrate, and they have, for a time being, they will accept the salary as if they had no choice, but in most circumstances they will go through either the markets, the caravans, or the guilds and find their own position within an open society of peers of their own kind, who work together in competition, but together in a perfect combining of competition and yet collaboration of people of the same kind. These guilds were so powerful that there are renowned letters, documentation, where we find kings begging the guilds to support this or this other war. They were the banks. They had the money. They were immensely wealthy institutions. And they had welfare. They supported hostels. They supported the schools. They supported hospitals. I mean, there are celebrated hospitals throughout England, where I lived for some years. And, the guild of this, the guild of that, the guild of that, the guild of that. They were built by guilds before the state comes into the picture, before there is a state formation as we understand it today. Pre-capitalist societies they are organized as guilds. Just get that. Okay, and that has to tell you something, because all pre-capitalist societies have guilds as the organization of labor. That's us. That's pre-capitalist societies is us. Is that what happened to us before we were colonized? So in other words, guilds are part of our tradition. You haven't invented anything new. All you have to do is to just go and check it out for yourself. Now, in the same way that the kirat is associated to the caravans, again, we have to say, the normal way The normal way of using the kirat is the caravan. Can you use the kirat outside the caravan? Kirat means mudaraba. Just any one of you is confused. It's the way of Medina of speaking about mudaraba. Mudaraba, by the way, means transiting or traveling. Another indication that the contract relates to the caravans. The contract normally, the normal way of using the kirat is in the caravan. The normal way of using shirkat is in the guilds. 99% of all the contracts of shirkat took place within the people of the same trade working within the guilds. That means the association of one or more than one of the people who are equal, who decided, you know what, well, let's get together and work together. The contract of shirkat, partnership, Imam Malik said they have to be working under the same roof. They have to be in the normal contract. Again, there are other types. You know, and can you make a contract in which the relationship is 60-40? Yes, of course. But the normal way of doing things in Medina is 50-50. The typical thing is two people work together in the same trade, they come together, they work together, they associate together, and they share the things 50-50. Can you do it differently? Yes, you can. And then the Hanafis come and tell you all the different exceptions that there is on the matter. But what it really interests me is what is normal. And what is normal is that the kirat is the contract of the caravans and the shirkat is the contract of the guilds. This coming together, this sense of loyalty, of owning things commonly. We own the things between the two of us, between all of us. The caravan owns all these stops over from here to Damascus. It has all these camels that they are owned by the city of Medina. This sense, all these privileges and contracts and agreements, they are owned by everybody. All that, this sense of thinking, where the fundamental infrastructure for running the trade of the economy in the society is commonly owned, is unique to Islam. The markets, they are waqaf. The center of all the means of production, they are waqaf. In the caravans, exactly the same thing. Waqaf, commonly owned. This fundamental distinction, it makes the societies of Islam unique throughout any other period of history. On account that the contract of waqaf is uniquely Islamic. It's not public, it's not private. Is owned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The consequences of this is that you create a true level playing field. When you say that the marketplace must be fair, and when we speak about fair trading, you cannot say fair trading and in the same mouthful speak about Walmart and Tesco, etc. Because that is not fair trading, it doesn't matter what. That is a monopoly. 2/3 of all retailing in Britain is owned by 5 supermarkets. In Switzerland, which is even more fun, one supermarket, Migros, owns 55% of all retailing. Okay? Kelantan has a Tesco, an Islamic Tesco, of course. It's called PAS Tesco. Islamic Party of Malaysia, Tesco. They are Zionist. I shouldn't say this thing because it doesn't mean anything anymore. That's not the point. The point is, the problem is not who is the owner of Tesco, who you should find out, but the fact that it's a monopoly in our land. We who have the knowledge, we are still falling apart on the matter. Now, let me tell you what all this thing comes about. What I'm saying is that Islam has a science of trading. Okay, we are not guessing. Rasulullah SAW came with a science of trading. It says marketplaces must be public marketplaces. End of the story. All these supermarket shops, etc., out. What you have a public marketplace owned by everybody, and it is a free institution. No pasamalams, not the people thrown in the streets. The traders go into palaces and they trade in palaces for free. These institutions, they have services provided for both traders and consumers that they generate wealth. which covers all the necessities of the marketplace, including, as history has proven, it covers even the mosque. So the revenues of the market building covered the maintenance of the mosque, of the marketplace, of the madrasa, of the hospital, the hammam, and the bakery. The whole imaret was covered by the revenues created, the services created within the marketplace. No marketplace, no trading. No trading, no freedom. As simple as that. This society has made trading haram and riba halal. But Allah says, halalahul baya wa haramul riba. This society, this great society, it says, halalahul riba wa haramul baya. And that is a disaster. If Islam is going to rise again, the Muslims have to pay attention to the institutions of Islam. Without trading, there's no Muamalat. Without trading, there is no prosperity. Rasulullah SAW said, 9/10 of the risk as in provision, comes from trading. If you abolish trading, it means you have only 1/10 left of your risk. It's like breathing but with only 1/10 of your pulmonary capacity. And on that 10th of your breathing that is left is full of riba, which means is making you impossible, making breathing impossible for you. And then you're still wondering why you are so poor and the kuffar are so rich. Why don't you, for 1 second, stop Islamizing Tesco's and Walmarts and stop producing new malls and create public marketplaces like Rasulullah SAW created in Medina, and connect the people with caravans that they are open to everybody, and transform the whole production nexus from slave wages into guilds of free men. That will be free society. That is the revolution of Islam. That's what Rasulullah SAW brought to the world. No riba, free marketplaces, no taxation, and that's the Islam that swept the world. That's the revolution that he brought forward. That's the changes that made everybody admire and follow Islam. We have fallen apart. We have to bring it back. There is no escape on this issue. There is no second way. The only way is the way of Medina al-Munawwara. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.